Hello
Start
all,
over.
and welcome to the Rails Board meeting. I am Alex Vancina, President of the Rails Board, and I call this meeting to order on Friday, May 26th at 10:01 a.m. Emily, would you please call roll?
Sure. Monica Keldon.
Here.
Rosie Camargo.
Here.
Alice Creason.
Here.
Robin Hellenthal. Here. Yay. Diane Hollister.
Here.
Renee Leva. Jennifer McIntosh.
Here.
Julie Millivite.
Here.
Becky Stratford.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Tuppen.
Here.
Alex Vancina.
Here.
Vanessa Villarreal. And Karen Boydick.
Here.
We have an in-person quorum.
Thank you, Emily. And now we're on to recognition of guests and announcements. Let's start with our guests here in Burr Ridge.
Monica Harris, Rails. Start with Ola.
Ola Gronsky, Rails.
Sharon Swanson, Rails.
Emily Feister Rails.
Jody Rubel, Rails.
Laylee Heath, Rails.
Laura Nemeth, Rails.
All right.
Wait, one
and-
more.
One more.
Just say your name. We started with the
And in East Peoria.
No guests here today.
Okay, thank you. Emily, do we have any guests on Zoom?
We do. We also have Diane Hollister, no, I'm sorry about that. There's no guests in Coal Valley. We also have Karen Egan at the Illinois State Library on Zoom, Ryan Hubble, Galen Ilev, Mary Witt, Joe Philippek, and Ann Slaughter.
Thank you. If Emily has not read your name, please announce yourself or put your name in the chat. There's no one else. Then next we have public comments. Emily, are there any public comments in East Peoria?
No.
Here in Burr Ridge, any public comments? Coal Valley,
No public.
any public comments? Any public comments at the State Library?
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any public comments from Zoom participants?
None.
Not, Emily, did you
None.
receive any comments via email?
No, I did not.
Thank you. Zoom chat will be disabled after the public comments section. Are there any other comments at this time or announcements? Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to move any item to the regular agenda for further discussion? May I have a motion and a second for adoption of the consent agenda?
So moved, Alice.
Alice, thank you.
Second, Karen.
Karen, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
no. Motion carries. Next up is Sharon with the financial report.
Good morning, everyone. The April 30th, I'm going to make this rather short because we didn't have anything out of the ordinary this month really to note. And you'll have a couple of other chances to hear from me later on during the meeting. So I will try to make this very short. The April 30th general fund cash and investment balance of 22.26 million would fund approximately 21.4 months of budgeted fiscal year 23 operations. This coverage did decrease slightly due to from the prior month due to not having received any APC grant payments during April. But the coverage should remain steady in May due to the May 3rd receipt of the final portion of our APC grant, which is the federal or LSTA portion in the amount of 1.9 million. This fiscal year 23 is the third year in a row that Rails has received the entire amount of the fiscal year grant by May in the same year as the grant was awarded. So the cash flow from the state is really very, very good and continues to be good. General fund revenues through April of just over 13.5 million were $540,000 above budget, and this is mostly due to investment income, which is $584,000 above budget. You'll see for our fiscal year 2024 budget because the Federal Reserve is expected to end increases at this point, but interest is expected to remain relatively steady. For the next short period of time, we budgeted about $700,000 of investment income, just to be more accurate with where we're at this point in time. And this overage, this budget overage revenues of the actual revenues to the budget is also due to the APC grant revenues received to date being over budget. Of course, this will even out since we've now received the entire grant. They're received sporadically throughout the year, but we do budget them evenly. And it's also this is also partially offset by lower reimbursement revenues of approximately $140,000. And this is just due to the fact that we budgeted some extra for request and new products for group purchases that we received during the year. So general fund expenditures through April of nearly $11.61 million were $889,000 below budget. And this is the same pattern as in prior months. So lower contractual services expenditures from the less than budgeted increase from our delivery outsourcing provider. And not having yet had the opportunity to award any Find More Illinois grants, the joining incentives, and we're not expected to award any through the end of fiscal year 2023. Also a shift of the cataloging grant opportunities for members to later in the fiscal year, and we do now know that we're going to award $86,314 in total, which is approximately $6,300 above the budgeted amount, but the overage will be absorbed by less than budgeted expenditures for the Verso Consortia ILS platform from Autographics, and this is the platform that we're investigating to potentially provide ILS and automation services to under-automated and non-automated libraries under the Find More Illinois umbrella. Personnel was also a major category that is currently under budget, and this is primarily due to the delayed hiring for the 3 new positions that we created in fiscal year 2023, as well as the delayed hiring to fill and rethinking of the RSA operations manager position, which is going to be filled early this next month. Well, has been filled, and the person will start fulfilling the role early this month, I should say, as well as the current vacancy of the associate executive director position. Library materials were also below budget due to timing differences, basically between budgeted and actual expenditures, as well as the additional group purchases that we budgeted for member requests for new products throughout the year. And travel is currently under budget, and at this point is expected to remain well below the budgeted amount. Vehicle expenditures as a whole are below budget, but of course, below budget in the area of fuel, but then that's offset by increased repairs and maintenance expenditures that we've had to incur because of the aging of our fleet. We are budgeting, just as a preview for later on in the agenda, we are budgeting the purchase of 12 delivery vehicles to offset this. So we were able to decrease that budgeted amount for repairs and maintenance expenditures for this next fiscal year with that purchase, the expectation of that purchase. And I did want to also mention, we did have one tiny little capital expenditure that occurred, and it was just additional electrical work to get the cubicles up to speed, the new cubicles for the Burr Ridge area. So those little expenses keep trickling in for that. And that was pretty much all that I had for this month. Did you have any questions for me?
I had a question.
Yes.
I know you have planned to purchase the new vehicles next year.
Mhm.
Maybe it's for Mark. Did you find vehicles yet?
We talked about it.
That's a yes and a no.
Uh,
We were able to
Please.
locate a dealership, Landmark Ford, that received the contract from CMS. They're hoping that Ford is going to open the ordering window June or July. So I'm actually going to.
Of this year?
Of this year.
Or next,
right.
okay.
Exactly. So that way, if they do open the window, then I can place the order at that time and then hopefully have vehicles by September, October. hopefully. That's if everything is still in place.
Okay.
So I don't know for sure. I'm hoping, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we will be.
More positive than negative.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
That's good.
Better news we have in a while.
Yeah.
but-
I also have a question about budgeting and vehicles. I realized we had to delay buying vehicles due to circumstances outside of our control. But I also know that in the past, we've tried to stagger vehicles, right? So have we thought about the budget implications of the fact that 12 of our vehicles are going to be coming old at the same time? I just want to make sure we're thinking about that in our future projections.
It's a great question, Becky.
It is a
And
fantastic
I-
question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Mark and I were just talking before the meeting. That's why I
Yeah.
only came in here 10 minutes before the meeting because we were in a lengthy discussion of we're pretty much at this point, the way we're both seeing it, going to have to replace an additional 12 vehicles next year.
So we're going to be on like a double 12 instead of having smaller groups. Okay, just so we know, that's actually probably better to have both groups be big rather than have like a little bit, a huge one. So we'll be able to have time to budget
Think
for that.
about
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and this will, because it's $750,000, we're going to be paying market price at
Right.
this point because everyone's paying market price
Right.
or above at this point, despite government purchasing contracts. So at this point, that's going to eat down the reserves at 750,000. So then when we do the purchase next year, because Mark and I were pulling out our crystal balls and speculating
Yeah.
if they're actually going to lower the prices by then, and we're thinking probably not. So that's going to be an additional $750,000 at that point. So the board may want to think in the future about replenishing the capital projects fund. Just
Right.
to put that out there. Because it hasn't, the last time that was, we only did the one designation the board did. And that was after we sold some of our buildings, and we took the money, the board took the money and designated it for future capital purchases, since it came from capital purchases from the past. So at that point, when we do that next year's budget, we may want to think about that. It may trigger that discussion.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Sharon? Thank you. All right. Next we have reports. I have no report this month, so we'll move on to committee reports, which were included in your packet. Are there any questions about the committee reports or additions? Hearing none. Next is Monica with the Rails monthly report.
Thank you, Alex. Good morning, everybody. We saw in the report, there was a breakdown of some of the meet and greets that we've had recently across the service area. Those have been really strong, and we actually had our last scheduled meet and greet yesterday in Quincy. It was great to be in Quincy with Emily and Dan Bostrom, and we had about 17 people who attended that event. So it's been a really wonderful opportunity to get to talk to a lot of members, hear some common themes in terms of some of the things people are concerned about. As we said last month, we did frame a lot of those discussions in terms of 4 questions. What are the challenges that are concerning to you right now? What things are you proud of that you're doing in your libraries and communities? What services does Rails provide that you find invaluable and would not want to see change? And then what opportunities are there for Rails to continue to grow? And so we will be able to compile a more comprehensive report following those 7 meet and greets by next month. But you can see that kind of update in the report about some of the things that have been most reported. What I'll say is that while most attendees have been from the public library area, we have had attendees from academic and school libraries as well. And it's been good to see so many members in person. So I want to thank both our hosts at all of these locations, our staff who put so much work into making these things happen, and the Rails members who came to all of the events. So thank you very much. In addition to those meet and greets, we've had additional meetings at some of our board member libraries. Thank you to those of you who have been able to host those. This month, I was able to visit Alice at Richton Park, and we are continuing to schedule some of those moving forward. So thank you very much for that. Of course, when we have new members join the board, we will continue that process as well, so we can continue to meet with some of our new folks as well. I also wanted to thank Rails board member Becky Stratford for your help at maintaining the Rails booth at our Reaching Forward event. event. There were also some pictures of Reaching Forward in your packet that I hope you were able to see. Another really successful event we were happy to observe. I don't have any new updates on the legislative pieces. I know Karen's on the call as well, but as of what we have seen right now, House Bill 2789 has been sent to the governor where he is expected to sign. Illinois Senate Bill 2419, the License to Read Act, has also passed both the House and the Senate and is expected to be sent to the governor soon. We also had a May ISLAC meeting in Springfield and discussed this legislation in some detail, including the Secretary's budget. As many of you probably saw, the Senate passed the budget last night and it's moving on to the House. We don't yet have the detail of where the Secretary's budget landed in that budget that is moving forward. But at the ISLAC meeting, Greg McCormick did mention that they were cautiously optimistic about the inclusion of the $5 million for state databases. So we hope to hear more about that soon. In addition to that conversation, Ann Slaughter presented on broadband and digital equity in Illinois, along with Troy Brown from the Illinois Heartland Library System. There was a great conversation about broadband and what we should be doing in Illinois. And Ann was actually contacted following that meeting by a representative from the Secretary of State's office that are interested in doing more surveying around Illinois. We're hoping to be able to bring in Grant Halter and some other folks that are working on this issue in the state to be able to make sure we're sharing everything we currently have and what we think we need to know. In addition to that, I know some of you may remember the Illinois Digital Heritage Hub, which was an ongoing program that's been happening for some time. At that ISLAC meeting, they did vote to make that from being a statewide project to moving under the umbrella of CARLI. So any future mentions of the Illinois Digital Heritage Hub, it has now been disbanded and that work is still continuing, but it's happening in the CARLI umbrella. There was also a discussion of the equalization grant for public libraries. At this point, that equalization grant has not been updated since 2009. So they mentioned at future meetings, there will be some discussion of how that will affect some of these libraries that fall below the threshold of the equalization grant. It is important to note that when there isn't enough money to be able to cover the needs for the equalization grant, that money comes from the per capita grant and potentially from the system budgets. So it's just a good thing to be aware of. And so we will continue to discuss that as some of those discussions move forward. And they are also forming a diversity task force for ISLAC. It's good to be able to attend those meetings. I have not yet been formally added as a voting member of that committee, although that is expected. And so I sit at the meeting and definitely discuss things. But at this point, if you see, I'm not yet voting. Once that commission is made, we'll make that happen. We are also continuing to pursue our joint staff meeting with Heartland. We are targeting the end of August currently for that meeting, and we're really excited to be able to all get together in one place. We're waiting to see if there's availability in Springfield to be able to meet that time, but we're looking forward to it, and I know that it'll be a good chance for all of our groups to get together. And in regards to the board election, as many of you know, the board election has closed. Something really great to share is that we have about 324 votes that were received as a result of this election. This is, I think, a direct result, some of the really incredible work done by our staff to get the word out this year, and especially Ola Gronsky, who you have sitting at the table today. We took in a lot of the suggestions that you all made for us about how to reach out to people in many different ways, and also really made sure that all of our media platforms were really clear about how to vote. And so as we have mentioned before, on average, we get about 200 votes in the board election. So this is a significant increase in people who are engaged with the election.
Yeah.
Really pleased about that, wanted to share. Finally, in terms of my report, I know many of you probably saw this, but I want to acknowledge it. That Mary Witt, who is our Director of Marketing and Communications, has announced her retirement. All of you probably know Mary, but Mary has been working for the systems for 36 years, has a huge wealth of knowledge, is extremely smart, brilliant, and hardworking, and we will miss Mary very much. We'll get a chance to continue to see her at our June meeting, but I did want to make sure that we acknowledge the significant contributions that Mary has made to the system and to Rails in particular, and note that. I know Mary's on the call today. Mary, I hate to put you on the spot, but is there anything you want to say today?
No, I've just enjoyed working with you all. I'm still going to be around a while,
But it's time for me to head on to greener pastures. Love my job, but I want to have a little bit more R&R while I still have a spring in my step. So, but it's been great working with you all, and I hope to see you before I leave. My last day is July 14th, so I'll be around a while. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Barry. Been having individual conversations with a lot of Mary's team this week, and I am really struck by, especially in terms of Mary's timing, what a wonderful position she has left us in Rails with a brand new website, with a fantastic staff, including a new hire, Ola. We have so many wonderful things in our strategic plan and things that have been completed and are moving forward. So Mary has left us in a good place, and we are looking forward to the future of our operations and the great team that she has assembled. But we want to make sure that you are all aware. See if there's anything. The only other thing that I wanted to acknowledge and make sure that you all saw was the libraries and the solar eclipse information session. We had our very first one here in Burridge, and it was probably the most people we've had for training in person in Burridge since the pandemic. It was really exciting to have people in the building again, and we do have upcoming events on June 7th at the Rock Island Public Library and July 25th at the Peoria Public Library. As many of you who remember the last solar eclipse in libraries know, this is a huge event and there's a lot to prepare for. So we're looking forward to some of these other pieces that are coming up. And if you look at the library's website, you'll see a picture from that event is now the header. And we're very happy to be able to note that as well. So that's what I have to share with you today from the report. Any questions or anything of note anyone would like to share? Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Next, we have Layla Heath with an update on Rails discounts and group purchases and consortium manager.
Hi, I'm Layla Heath. I am the Director of Library Resources and Programs. And as Alex mentioned, the area I manage includes deals and discounts that we're going to be discussing today. And Jody Rubel, our Rails Library Resource Specialist, will also be presenting today. You'll see a handout up on the screen that contains some basic information as well as the links that I'll mention today. And we're going to cover just kind of our philosophy around deals and discounts, what Rails offers to members and vendors, what some of the budget implications are. As Alex mentioned, we'll talk about consortium manager, and then Jody is going to talk about some of the current deals that are in place. So first of our philosophy, we are looking for vendor partnerships that will benefit our member libraries. We want quality deals that are proven solid resources or trending new resources, but that offer a deep discount that translates into savings. We want transparency. We want logical pricing and resources that will appeal to a large number of libraries. When we work together, it's no surprise we bring a great economies of scale to the process. We have in Rails with our K through 12, our publics, our special and our academics, over 3,000 libraries, close to 3,600 libraries and in Rails, and of course, even more across the state. So vendors tend to pay attention when we bring those kind of numbers to the table. Last year, members saved over $1 million through deals and discounts on products such as the EBSCO packages and products, Swank, Communico, Press Reader, Gale Analytics, BiblioBoard Creator, and more. And I want to talk this today about what we bring, what Rails brings. One of the things that's really important is that we just have a bird's eye view of the overall Rails landscape. And that allows us to bring a perspective on ways to penetrate and to optimize deals. There are a lot of levels of complexity, and this includes library type, LSAP participation, and more. And the needs of these subsets are very different, and they have to be analyzed accordingly. And probably one of the more striking things is the schools, as we're getting into the K through 12 market, we're just seeing that, you know, they don't necessarily move as a district, they move as individual buildings. And so there's just that has implications on pricing, has huge implications on the data. So as we're learning these things, we're able to to set things up so that they're optimal for our libraries. And as I mentioned, this data, we've been working hard on this, and we need to look at savings in deals and discounts. We need to look at opportunities. We need to look at comparisons over different parameters like populations and budgets. So needless to say, we work very close with Grant Halter and Jeanette DeRucchi and all other Rails folks as well on organizing, maintaining, and analyzing this data. Because of the vast amount of data that we're working with, we're accustomed to handling large-scale operations, and we're getting more and more practice at it. And this demands efficiencies in our procedure. So that is a big focus and something that and when we're structuring deals, they have to be straightforward, not overly complicated. Billing practices, same thing. That's like when we're looking at start dates and we're bringing everybody to one renewal date, that kind of thing. I'm finding that as I'm talking to other consortia across the state and nation even, it's something that we all face, but Rails at an extremely large scale. So we're able to bring some interesting things to the conversation. Feedback. We connect and listen to our expert librarians and library staff, often through the networking groups and listservs. And I always give a shout out to the ELSIM group. They are the electronic resources librarians, and they have a network group, and they have really just been a huge help in identifying potential resources and providing feedback. Also, I'd like to mention ISLE, because that is another place where we're just really learning about some of the needs at the schools, and as we're trying to develop that market. We also reach out to other and systems and consortia in the state, including IHLS and CARLI, as well as across the nation. And this feedback informs our choices regarding deals to pursue that are going to be meaningful. We also share this feedback with our vendors, unless of course it's confidential, then we don't. But we do share both positive and if there are issues so that they can make improvements. And finally, we look at marketing. This is changes as the needs change, working with our communications department, finding just the different venues. Sometimes, of course, there's the weekly e-news, social media, but Jody also has been finding ways to target through listservs and email lists when we just need to get those members, and we're finding that that's been really effective. Jody's also been really working hard on webinars, and so she's getting people to those webinars to learn more about these products. So, and then one thing that is on the handout that we also do, we were asked at one of the ELSIM group meetings a couple years ago about providing a hub basically for links to privacy policy pages for the libraries. That is a really important consideration. These are policies for the third-party vendors who, we have. Some of them we have deals and discounts, some of them don't, but we still need to have the privacy policy. So we have that, as well as a related page that deals with web accessibility for e-resources. So we're able to sometimes be a hub for those kinds of projects. As I mentioned, we save $1 million, but we also, this program is growing rapidly. We are conservatively targeting to be at $3 million for fiscal year 24. And as I mentioned, it is continuing to press our need for increased efficiencies and prioritization so that we can have a sustainable program. I always find it really fun to build, but then there's the maintenance, and you all know that is, something that has to be handled. So we did two things. First of all, library specialist position was funded and added in November of 2022. And I am so pleased to have Jody Rubel sitting in that seat. Jody has been with Rails for about 10 years, so she brings a wealth of that institutional knowledge to the position, as well as her attention to detail, her creativity. It has really just made a significant difference. And I know a lot of you at the libraries have had reach outs with Jody on the renewals and things. We're able just to take on a lot more on that realm. And we also and you're going to be hearing from Jody shortly. Also, this consortium manager platform, we purchased that a couple years ago. We started to license that. And this software allows us to organize and track the multitude of steps in each and every deal. And I've sort of talked about it in general terms, but I'm going to just share a little bit more about what Consortium Manager does. And basically, its job is to wrangle all of the data that's associated with the deal. So this includes library information. So it's population, operating expenditures, library type, contact information, LSAP info for all of those 3,600 libraries that I mentioned. We have, in addition, all the vendor and product information. So that's included. Pricing structures. I try to do consistent pricing for every deal, and it changes for every deal. Every deal is its own little project, and it just, you know, it is what it is, and you want to make it the best it's going to be. So Consortium Manager allows us to do that for each deal, as well as manage the subscription start and end date. So there's both renewals and then there's new people signing on. So that's all kind of happening. And it keeps track of if people are accepting, rejecting, pending, and it really has been a tremendous asset. I will tell you that because of the size and complexity of our environment, this software is actually used worldwide. We have given it a pretty good challenge. What works for 400 libraries in a consortia does not necessarily translate to not only the number of libraries we have, but all of our different special situations. And so it's taken longer to address some of these complexities and capacities, both internally. It's been helpful for us. The software it shows us where we need to shore things up or change things. But also externally, we've been showing Consortium Manager where they need to shore up and change things. So the processes are different. Some of our objectives are different, and those have brought really interesting conversations to consortial tables in general. One of the things that we are insistent upon in our deals is that existing libraries are brought into the deal. I think that it is only fair if a library has been a loyal customer and they've been buying something that the pricing isn't strictly for new libraries. And so sometimes that means that the deal's not going to happen, but oftentimes it does. And, you know, and our vendors have been really great. It's a risk to them when they do that. That is, you know, and so I really commend our vendors that work with us, but they also see the potential and see what an asset we can be in just managing the multitude and kind of streamlining that process for them. So, but as we're working through these things with Consortium Manager, conversations come up about that. And, you know, however it lands on it, you know, what for a consortia, it's still good to have the conversations. We have a library facing site in Consortium Manager. We have not introduced that because we've got to get that back end where we want it to be. But also because of how we, again, our environment here, we need, Jody and I are looking at it. There's some layers to work through to just make sure that it makes sense for everyone if and when we roll that side of it out. Consortium Manager has really, I think, exposed a lot of areas for better streamlining and really helped us manage this data as we're moving forward through all of this. One thing I have to say, we're just getting great participation in this program, and that really helps us because that is what our negotiations are based on, potential and also on the participation. Also, the being billed through Rails is really important. And as Sharon mentions, every month, you know, people are also participating in that. But I just wanted to talk about for a minute about why it's important. First of all, it gives me oversight. Every week, practically, I have an invoice that I send back to the vendor. I had one this week for $2,000 and another one for $75 because there's just a lot of libraries. It's not intentional. It's just, you know, but we see it. I will also give a shout out to the finance department besides Sharon, but Deb Mitchner and Kim Perry. We're on the phone almost every day or going back and forth every day on things. And they do such a great job of keeping things just, it's not a small task to keep this amount of money and back and forth and invoicing organized, and they do it with good cheer. So thanks to them. And also the invoicing helps us to quantify the value of the deals and the program. So we really appreciate all of the support that libraries are giving to the program, your patience, your enthusiasm. It really just makes it a great place to work. And I think it's showing in the results. So I'll pass it over to Jody now to talk about what's new.
Hi, I'm Jody Rubel, Library Resource Specialist, and I wanted to talk about what's new. And we were happy to announce that in May, we were able to announce Hive Class and InfoBase to the suite of deals we offered to members. Hive Class is a digital encyclopedia for youth sports training. InfoBase is a expansive streaming video collection that highlights award-winning films, documentaries, how-to programs, content for kids, and a world cinema collection. InfoBase also offers products that for databases for research on literature, science, and career guidance. We're excited to share that the new libraries are opting in to sign up and on these products already. Next, I want to say that bringing on newly added programs like Hive Class and InfoBase are complex and take time. Each deal is its own project, as Layla noted. Layla and I started exploring InfoBase and Hive Class last fall, but we were finally able to roll it out to members in early May. As part of building the partnership with the vendor, we take into consider libraries that are already subscribed directly, as Layla noted, and plan for the transitioning for libraries over to the Rails discounted package. At the same time, we're building new programs. We are preparing for the next round of subscriptions renewals, which could take 4 to 6 months in advance to plan for. Next week, we'll be wrapping up the EBSCO, Pressreader, and ALA RDA Toolkit subscription renewals. For more information about Rails, visit the Rails Deals and Discounts, where you will find full list of offerings, free trial opportunities, webinars, and pricing. Pricing is sensitive and for Rails member libraries only. Subscribe to the Rails e-news for promotions and upcoming webinars. Thank you for your time today. And do you have any questions?
I do. For Jody and Layla, I would love to encourage you to keep working with Swank. School libraries would love to get in on a Swank deal. It is a platform that is growing in use, and possibly their response could be something about licensing. But to me, school use is solidly under the fair use umbrella, and so hopefully that would help to make Swank ready to make a deal. My subscription with them started, and then of course, as you know, it just keeps as soon as you grow to love a product, now it's so much more, and now you can't get rid of it because you love it, and everybody uses it.
Netflix.
Yeah, like that. So I would encourage you, please keep working with Swank and see if they would include schools in on something.
They have been a great partner.
Good.
And a good example of a deal that started in 2019. It was literally the first thing that came across my desk. And so it has been in place for 4 years. And they really worked through we worked through the pandemic together. They've been a great partner. But with the schools, we have talked with them about that, and we will work on that.
Okay.
The complexity there is that they are already in the school market and in not the most straightforward way for bringing it over. And so that's the piece of it that will take, some
Right.
time and some figuring, because they're in hundreds of libraries in the school. So,
Yes.
but yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Well,
Thank-
there's my encouragement.
We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And then I wonder,
Yes.
maybe you could borrow Sharon's crystal ball for a moment and just sort of I'm thinking about when the when it becomes law about the Illinois State Library being able to negotiate ebooks and audiobooks, like I don't want to be, as a school library who has, you know, like what would Sharon's crystal ball tell you? What does that look like? Is that going to be through eRead Illinois? Don't even know. We can't even talk about it. Like I don't want to have like my stuff over here that isn't going to get that impact of better pricing or negotiation. Like if I got to be in this group, I want to know before I lose out on anything.
Can I jump in on that one,
Sure.
Layla?
Has extra layers of.
So there was some discussion about that at ISLAC, and I think that the Secretary of State, while being very interested in moving this forward, is at a very early sort of stage about what that might look like.
Okay.
We did actually ask if we could be on the agenda next month to talk about ebooks in Illinois, some of the issues that are happening, you know, at all levels with negotiation, understanding the background of those pricing pieces with publishers, but also have the opportunity to talk about what the systems are doing in terms of those ebook programs currently, just to make sure that the Secretary of State's office fully understands what's happening now, so that as they think about solutions for the future, that they're taking that under account.
Okay.
So I think there will continue to be conversations about that, but I think it may appear on the agenda for the July ISLAC meeting to have further discussion, and then we may have more information about what the future looks like after that.
Okay.
And anything you would add there, Layla? Because Layla was at the meeting as well. It is ISLAC meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the whole issue that this is the first time states are trying to do this with the information we have on other states that have been struck down, these laws.
Legally, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So there are other states that have tried to do this. Those were struck down legally because very powerful lobbyists in the publishing world went against them. So this is there's a couple states that are on the track that we're on in Illinois, trying to create laws that intercept those complaints. I'm trying to use the right language, intercept those complaints. So we don't even know, even if it passes, if it will happen. So don't make plans.
Okay.
Yes, it's a great point to mention, Becky. And Maryland in particular was the first state to bring that through, and that had their law held up because of a legal challenge. So I know that the language in the current bill is not the same as the language in Maryland that was held up, but it is likely that this may also face legal challenges. And so we'll also have to see where some of that goes.
Okay. All
Keep
right.
going on.
Got it. Got it. More crystal balls needed. Okay.
Like 17.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions we could, yes?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious if you could comment on kind of the legal framework you work in. Are you subject to the Illinois public procurement law? Do you have to go out to RFP at a certain point? Do you have any of those sorts of restrictions?
The academics have much more stringent guidelines and.
Right, that's
and
what I know,
most of-
so I'm
yeah,
curious what you
yes.
what you have to
And-
don't have to do.
You know, and that's one of the things that Carly and I, talk about, and a lot of our academic libraries for their licensing and things they work through Carly because of those stringencies. At Rails, we're opt-in purchasing. So the libraries really are licensing directly with the vendor. We're brokering the price is really our role in getting the price and making sure that that libraries can participate in that pricing.
But then you're coming up with standard licensing terms that everybody is following, right, for the deal, or is everybody individually?
It's individual and
license.
yeah, we don't sign licenses that they have to stay with. They're signing the licenses with the individual libraries.
Okay.
So it's really a price brokering, and this is how the pricing is structured. And this is the terms, and it's, that kind of thing.
And so if different libraries have different licensing requirements, like different legal requirements, then they have to put that forward and
with the vendor.
Work that with the vendor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and when they're when they're doing their authorizations and things like that, they work directly with the libraries. That is all done directly.
Okay.
Is that kind of like when you block off a group of rooms, if you have a wedding at a hotel or something, and you say it's going to be certain amount, certain dollar amount, but then the people have to actually call the hotel and
Yes, I guess
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
kind of an analogy,
A
right?
good analogy.
I'll give you an example of the kinds of things I have to deal with at every single contract
Yeah.
is we're subject to the Illinois Local Government Prompt Payment Act. So our contracts I have to ask every vendor to extend us net 60 terms on an agreement instead of 30, which was what they would normally want. I'm always asked they need to make Illinois the governing law for the contract. Our college wants everything to be mutual indemnity clauses. So I have to go back and ask for that. There's a lot of things I have to ask for with every single contract. So working with a consortium, if there's a general license, removes a lot of that extra administrative burden on us, our individual. We spend a lot of time doing that work. So working with Carly, they are able to draft a master license that works for all of us. And I can say that they're being subject to Illinois public procurement policies. And I can say to my college, look, they're following state procurement. We don't have to take care of this, guys, so.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's a different setup. So as long as there's an easy opportunity to still work with the vendor on getting terms that we need, at least we can potentially get good pricing through Rails if you have more academic deals in the future.
Yeah, and
So it's been hard.
it is, and it is really, again, the difference in the library types and how they operate is just really striking. And when you just are looking at it on the face of it, you just wouldn't know that, but they are very different. Yeah.
And I expect more legislation in the future that mandates accessibility features and standards in all of our content. So, I imagine there'll be more things in the future that we have to continue to challenge with
Yes.
vendors. It's just a very complicated space.
It really is, and even with the academics, their populations, we've learned, they're not like, even what is an FTE in a school, it's different based on the kind, all of you in the academics are shaking your heads, like, yeah, but we, you would think an FTE, if you're not in it, you'd think an FTE is an FTE, a person's a person, right? Well, not necessarily, because they may have classes come and they may want to use FTEs for one report in one way. So you're using one standard, like say that if a person takes one class, they're counted as an FTE. But if you need to use it as part of a cost, it may not be so advantageous to use that as an FTE. So that was a difference. That's one thing in academics that publics and schools and even specials don't really have to consider. So,
for example, like credit and non-credit students, which FTE, different schools have different standards that they use as their primary benchmarking number. Do you include employees and students? If you're open to the public, to what degree does it allow for walk-in use by the public, right?
Yeah. So when you're in deals and discounts, the way it applies is just, so how are we doing the pricing model? What's the FTE? Yeah.
You've got a big job. I applaud
It's
you for all
very
the great work you've done.
interesting. Well, we are, Jody and I are never bored. No one ever. So,
And I'm so glad you brought up that difference,
Yeah.
Jennifer, because I think it is illustrative of the nuance that goes into the work that Layla and Jody do. And it's, again, really amazing that they can do as much as they can within the nuance of the different library types that we have. And it sort of helps you understand why it's so difficult sometimes to get even the same vendor, to be able to offer the different types of deals to the different library types. So it's all the differences that go into that.
I might encourage you to think about, I have to maybe dig to see if you are doing this, but maybe a little clearer when there is the possibility for pricing could be extended to academic libraries, but be clear about that it genuinely is just pricing and that all of your licensing requirements would still, that's a parallel process that would still need to happen. That's just something to maybe think about. I know I'm not alone. A lot of my academic colleagues were commiserating about my legal is asking for this, my IT is pushing back. Everybody's got their own set of benevolent overlords that are.
Right.
Just great suggestion.
Yes. And in schools, we have, what are they complying with SOPA? Because, we can't license anything that isn't going to, have this privacy protection. So I agree. Yeah.
But price negotiations in and of itself is a whole extra challenge that many staff are not, frankly, prepared to go through. I mean, it gets put on a lot of people's plates that they didn't have any preparation for, right? Great, you're now our chief negotiator because you got put in charge of electronic resources, or you're the new library director, and you're thinking, wait a minute, I got a terrible deal on my last used car. Like, you're not going to be in charge of all of this negotiating with vendors. At least getting the pricing settled down is one box checked.
Yeah, it is one place I think when I was at a library, the thing is you're kind of in a little bit of a vacuum. You have to do a lot of reaching out, and you may have 30 electronic resources. That's just electronic resources. And just the time, you might have time to negotiate too, but then it's December. It's like, you're short, you're down a man, you got to be at the desk. It's like, okay, fine. It's 5%. That looks reasonable. We don't feel that that's always reasonable. So we're here, so that we can at least stabilize and just let people focus on, do you need the resource and do other things, is our hope that, and also, again, we've got the sort of the big picture, not sort of, we do have the big picture, and we can see, does the pricing make sense, and does it make sense looking across the other deals? Is that where that should be sitting? Or is that, if it's higher than why or lower than why, so those things we can do and hopefully free up some time and money.
I love to hear that Jody's looking on listservs too, because our, the high school library listserv group that I'm with, we share a lot about, what's your renewal look like? And there was with Swank, there was one of our colleagues, got this great deal. And so it was like, everybody was like, call Swank and get the Christie deal, and literally that's what they called. And they were like, okay, we'll match that. But unless people share, then we lose that chance to, to benefit from other people's awesome negotiation. And then even like, if then the vendor is like, okay, rather than offering the Christie special, maybe it's better for us just to work with Rails, because we know we'll have, a wider platform.
Yeah, and when you bring up, I'm going to ask him about the Christie special.
Yeah. I think it is no longer in effect, because my pricing has definitely gone up from where I started.
Because many times they have restrictions on speaking about your pricing with other schools. There are prohibitions that are contractually written in sometimes. So
I suppose.
Yeah, no,
okay.
we've got some vendors that are very explicit about, you can't talk about this pricing with other colleagues.
A lot of it is foiable. You pay the check, it's foiable. So, but the other thing is that some of the libraries have either been with the deal a long time, or they've just done a great job negotiating, and we try to protect that too. So, we don't always go in, we don't always get the rock bottom low price that the person who's been with them for 10 years got, which I think is fair. I mean, if it's, and so we try to keep those we grandfather those prices in, we ask for that.
Yeah. I just, one last thing, I do appreciate when vendors show great integrity, and they will say, recently I started using Ingram as my book jobber, and they said, oh, I see you're a Rails member. Here's your discount. And I didn't even know to ask for that. And I thank them greatly for having integrity and for seeing that I would qualify for this discount that was negotiated. So I always applaud vendors who do the right thing.
Wonderful to hear, Monica.
Yeah.
I just want to say really briefly and thank Layla and Jody for this presentation, but I'll also say, you all have had the opportunity to hear about a lot of this, through the course of these meetings, and hear through the budget planning that, of course, it's $3 million worth of negotiated deals. But I will say members are also noticing some of the increased changes that have happened in deals and discounts over the last few years. And it's been mentioned very frequently as a value that Rails members really appreciate. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, and also for sharing more with the board today.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Layla and Jody. Next, we have State Library. Karen?
Good morning. Thank you. Wow, what a great segue. That was incredible discussion. I am really glad that to hear all of your rich comments, and I took a lot of good notes. We are closely tracking actions that are being taken at the state capitol. And as Monica said, House Bill 2789, which protects the freedom of libraries and library systems to acquire materials without external limitation and to be protected against attempts to ban, remove, or otherwise restrict access to books or other materials, passed both the House and Senate, and is expected to be signed into law after the legislature has adjourned. So that's really exciting. I know this is a hot topic for Alexei Giannoulias, our new Secretary of State. And he feels very passionate about this. The next step after the governor signs this bill will be drafting the administrative rules. And for those of you concerned, there will be an open period for comments. And our timeline is expected that the rules will be in place in January. And so there will be plenty of time for comments as these move forward. And Monica, I know that ISLAC will be involved in reviewing the drafts before they go forward to JCAR.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen.
Sure. Senate Bill 2419 is licensed to read. And Becky, you said it so eloquently about the issues going on in other states. Everything the state library does has to be authorized in statute. And license to read has passed both the House and Senate and has been sent to the governor for his signature. What this does, it allows the Secretary of State to negotiate for ebooks and audiobooks on behalf of users statewide. So think beyond system members on this as well. This enabling legislation brings in the Secretary's General Counsel and procurement to the table, which will only be to the benefit of libraries. Now, I will caution you, this is not to duplicate efforts. And the state library will be working with Rails and Heartland and Carly on this effort. So this is not going to be done in a vacuum when it happens. So just so that you know it, it's to make things better. Senate Bill 250 is the budget. And the second reading starts at 5 o'clock tonight. And, and I can tell you that as of this moment, everything the secretary had put in the budget is still there. Secretary Giannoulias is committed to the $5 million procurement of statewide databases as part of his FY24 budget. Internally, the state library has been reviewing documents from other states and especially looking at the Michigan e-library model. If you guys want to look at that and Google it, it's the Michigan e-library model. This has given us a good sense of how many people are using their statewide databases and at what costs. And as somebody on the board said earlier, and I'm so sorry I didn't catch your name, that sometimes being able to go with, you know, this is what you charged Michigan, and they only have this many people, so why are you charging us this? Really helps with those vendor negotiations. We do expect an RFP will be issued to procure the databases. And this will be an initiative that will allow the secretary to address the needs of those living outside a public library service area. We're working, that's what Michigan's model does. It is statewide. And so that will be really exciting for moving forward universal library services and providing access to information. So it'll be for anybody living in the state of Illinois. Grants, we are finalizing the FY23 grants and working with review committees to award the FY24 grants. The public library per capita grants for FY23 were just announced this week. And just so you know, 639 public libraries received $18 million with just over $111,700 additionally awarded in equalization aid grants. Now think about that, $111,700. That's all that were eligible for equalization aid this year. And that's why ISLAC is really looking at those equalization aid grants and the formula. Maybe it's time to increase that base level amount. So all public library per capita award announcements have been distributed to public libraries. And I know that the system is working really hard on this as well as the system board, but your system area and per capita grant application is due June 1st. So we really look forward to receiving this. Now, do you have any questions for me about anything going on here at the State Library that I can hopefully answer for you?
I have one question. It's Julie from Downers Grove. Have we gotten word from JCAR about the Cards for Kids administrative rules? Because what you can find published so far still only does free and reduced lunch. And so the newest version that allows us to extend to all students under 18, there are no rules to follow. And we would really like to get that going before the next school year begins.
We also discussed that at LaGrange this week too.
You know what, Julie and Becky, I will
How
check
do we
on
do it?
those.
That's what I want to
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I will check on that and I'll let Monica know and she can, let the whole board know. Thank you for that question. That's really good.
I just want to clarify because Julie and I were at the ILA meeting yesterday with Greg, and Derek told us that the budget needs 3 readings. So that's correct, right?
Yes.
So we're on reading 2 tonight because he was saying to us, he was giving us a scenario of them reading it. So still not convinced they're going to do it before the holiday.
However, they said on the radio this morning as I was driving to work that they expect the budget to pass this weekend, that they are going to stay and get this passed this weekend.
Yeah,
Theoretically.
he was explaining it to us. All right, so it
But
has
the
to have 3 readings. So when you see that the 3rd reading happened, that's when they can vote.
Yeah, but the second reading is tonight at 5 o'clock.
Good. He was thinking it might be at midnight. So that's an improvement.
Yeah, that could be the 3rd reading.
Well, I'll just add one thing. The Illinois Association of School Boards, through their press policy service, has suggested new and improved language that school boards adopt that would put them in compliance with the freedom to read, to include the Bill of Rights. And so lots of schools and school libraries are talking about this. So I love the fact that this IAS, Illinois Association of School Boards, is like they got it. They see what's coming. They're going to get school districts ready to go. Of course, the worrying part is I read online school librarians who are reporting that their boards do not want to include that new language. And of course, it will have a financial impact on them if they no longer qualify for the per capita grant in whatever way that future process will look like. But mostly it seems like a very positive thing. And I'm glad that school boards are already getting good advice from their groups.
That's super important because it's the one thing that schools have not been able to use, which public libraries can rely on the fact that they have, every public library has in their policies that they follow the freedom to read, they follow the ALA Bill of Rights. So that would be really huge.
Yes.
And I know that, and I'm sure Reels and Heartland are going to be doing lots of education on this to make sure that school libraries as well have collection management policies that outline how they select their books. Because I think that's one thing that people who object to this are missing, that money is limited and schools, all types of libraries, have to really select what is appropriate for their audience and do it by their selection policy. More to come on that.
These are really great updates, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing such detail.
Anytime. We're here anytime you have questions, and I will follow up on the administrative rules for Cards for Kids.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. All right, next up we have new business. And the first one is our fiscal accountability policy update. Monica?
Thank you. So and you got in your packet policy updates for 2 policies, the first of which is the fiscal accountability policy and the second is the social media policy. Both of these were reviewed by our policy committee, which is chaired by Jennifer McIntosh. Both of those groups have looked through these policies, given comments on the changes that they wanted to see, as well as reviewed the changes that were made by rail staff and legal. And so what you see here is an example of the original policy and then all of the changes. So these have been recommended to the board to consider for approval, but now is a great time to ask questions. What you saw in the packet were comments on the fiscal accountability policy, both from Sharon and then also from legal at Ansel Glink around those. So they do reflect changes that have happened in the marketplace and then legally since the time that it was last approved. So are there questions either for myself, for Sharon, or for Jennifer about the fiscal accountability policy?
All right, if there are no questions regarding the policy update, may I have a motion and a second to approve the fiscal accountability policy?
So moved.
Julie, thank you.
I'll second.
Rosie, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. So back to Monica and Mary for the social media policy.
So the second policy that you see here is our general social media policy. There have also been changes legally and in the marketplace since it was last approved in 2016. And so the changes that you see are reflected on the next page in red. This was reviewed by our communications and marketing team to make sure that it adheres to our current practice, as well as by legal to make sure that things are noted the way that they need to be here, and did also go through the policy committee process. So any questions about the social media policy changes as you see them here?
All right, may I have a motion and a second to approve the rail social media policy?
I move that we approve the updated social media policy.
Thank you, Monica.
A second, Karen.
Aaron, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
no. Motion carries.
If I could, Alex, I just want to let the board and remind the board that the policy committee will be continuing to go through all of the policies that we have and providing either updates or just an opportunity for the board to review a policy as is. After we go through all of the policies and then go through the personnel policy revisions in fiscal year 2024, we'll have the policies on a regular calendar so that the board can review on a regular basis along with the policy committee, just to make sure that everything's up to date and in keeping with our current practice.
While you're going through it, I'm assuming this is being done, but standard procedure is also to go through and check all your she, they, or she, he, and turn them to they, theirs.
That's part of our personnel policy will involve the equity analysis by an outside consultant. And once we have the recommendations there and approved, then we will look at those changes. But yes, great point.
I'll just say, kind of walking away from policy committee, this week we kind of took on this more regular review this year. And it's I think it's been a really positive experience of just kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of how Rails operates. And I think if you're really trying to get to know Rails in a more deep way, I think this is a really good committee to consider joining next year if you're interested in just understanding things, because we keep seeing model policies that we know we can really present out to members. And it is just a great way to get to know the organization. I know at first glance, a lot of people are like policy. I don't know if that's where I belong, but I would encourage you to think about it. I think it's going to be a really nice experience. They'll have a very regular kind of pace to the work. So I would encourage you to think about participating in that committee next year.
I appreciate that, Jennifer. And I also want to thank you for your leadership of this committee, which has been, a great deal of detail-oriented work that goes into this committee. So
Right, but you get stuff in advance, you get a chance to kind of gnaw on it and then really talk about it with staff, and it's been a good experience.
Okay. Next up, we have unfinished business. First, Monica will present the APC grant application and the budget for the next fiscal year.
Thank you. So all of you have received in your packet a memo that is an overview of our 2024 operational plan and budget review. It also includes a very detailed financial narrative prepared by our finance manager, Sharon Swanson, as well as the draft operational plan. So I know that's a big group of pieces here for us to talk about today. But I am really excited to be able to share some of the changes potentially that we would move forward with fiscal year 2024. I do, of course, want to extend my thanks to the Illinois Secretary of State for the additional APC grant funding that Rails received in fiscal year 2023. It really allowed us to continue our much needed and very heavily used services that we have in place. The State Library has instructed us to submit the operational plan and budget based on our annual revenue of $11,871,714, which is the funding from the Area and Per Capita Grant. But I just want to remind everybody that does not include additional projected revenue of approximately $1.7 million, which consists of fees and services of materials, including eRead Illinois and the ILDS contract. So that's why you'll see the differentiation between those numbers. Of course, as we look at this coming year, we're really looking at sustainability. So making sure that everything that we have in place is something that we can continue on into the future and that we're meeting the member needs that have been outlined by the strategic planning process. So we put a great deal of time and energy into those focus groups, into identifying what those needs are. And so what you will continue to see is to see those needs reflected in all of our reporting that we do each month, but it also identifies what some of those changes are. So we kind of put some of our changes into a few different buckets. The first is resource sharing. Of course, we did talk a little bit about our Verso solution a little bit earlier in the process with our financial management, but Find More has continued to grow, and that growth has been substantial in the last year. While Find More was developed because not every library can join a consortium, we wanted to be able to offer an affordable solution for resource sharing, could potentially serve as an alternative to OCLC for interlibrary loan. And we want to continue our investment in Find More Illinois by investigating the Verso platform development, which would allow for under-automated or non-automated libraries to potentially have a circulation model to go along with Find More Illinois. So that investigation is budgeted as part of our process. We did talk about replacement vehicles. Of course, it's a very significant cost, but it's something that's absolutely needed to make sure that we can continue our delivery in a sustainable way. Our ebook program, eRead Illinois, continues to see growth for fiscal year 2024. We have been very pleased so far with the progress on the renewal for that program, but we have identified that given all of the school libraries that have come on board in that program, as well as just usage patterns, that we continue to need more in terms of our Spanish language material and materials for K through 12. So we have identified an additional $100,000 in costs that would help to support additional materials that would go into that program. Of course, when it comes to eRead, costs to administer the program are maintained by Rails, and the participant fees actually directly support the purchase of the ebooks in the shared collection. So this would be in addition to those fees. Our Explore More Illinois Pass has grown, and we are continuing to be really excited about the attractions that are coming on board and continuing the focus as a statewide program. So we're moving that into a new process for rebranding this year, and we're doing that process with our partners at the Chicago Public Library and at Heartland Library System, so that we can make sure we come up with a brand that we're all excited to share with our members. When it comes to equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, this remains the second priority that is on our strategic plan. We have identified a lot of continued pieces in part of our operational plan for how we will move that forward. We want to continue to move forward with buy-in for library leadership. This has been consistently identified by our EDI committee of the board, that while EDI practices and best practices and continuing to work on these things is very important, that it's very hard to make these changes without buy-in from library directors and library trustees. So to that end, we are developing and planning to offer next year trustee-focused EDI training that would be organized in a way that trustees can potentially and hopefully attend. So that's something we'll be working with the support of our EDI consultant, Biz Lindsay Ryan, who is herself a trustee for her school board. So understands kind of the unique perspective that trustees bring to their organizations. Secondarily, as many of you know, we had a cohort process for our EDI program in this last year, where we were able to take 40 different Rails members from different area libraries and give them a long-term EDI learning solution. That was a really positive program. But as we explored kind of what we want to do for this next year in that process, we looked at a couple different funding opportunities for how we could explore that level of in-depth kind of training into the future. And one process that became very aware to us is a group called Freedom Lifted. Some of you may be aware of this asynchronous learning platform around EDI, and that is focused on libraries. There's a significant discount that is offered for that program through the Public Library Association. When we began to investigate if that might be a good option for Rails, they let us know that instead of just organizing a cohort around that process for a certain amount, they could make available to us an option to purchase for a certain amount the opportunity to have licensing for the entire Rails territory to actually go through that program. So what that would offer is, while a cohort, we had to sometimes be able to say, well, we can't really guarantee we can take on more than one person from each library just to make sure we can meet maximum need. This would allow libraries who have an interest in moving some of this training forward to be able to bring whole groups up from their library to do this training together, and then to be able to offer additional discussion within their libraries. So we're really excited to try this out for this coming year. We think it's a great option. In addition to that, we have had some requests to consider, of course, lots of opportunities to look at multiple EDI consultants, because there's so many folks who bring great things to the table. And in addition, to continue to make sure that we are considering EDI consultants that are also people of color. The main facilitator for Freedom Lifted is Mia Henry, who is a facilitator who is based out of the Chicago area and is a woman of color. And this program, as we have mentioned, does have a lot of focus specifically for libraries, which is very different than a lot of other programs that are offered throughout the country. So we're very excited about this. This is something that sort of came to us as a possibility in our last kind of development of the budget. So we wanted to be able to share that with you all, since that was a change. We also wanted to continue to look at infrastructure support and all this administrative support that we have to be able to do to support all of these programs. Many of our Rails member library directors are reporting that they are considering salary increases in the range of 3 to 6% for the coming year. Heartland is proposing across the board raises of 5%. They included a raise of 4% last year when we did a 5.9% increase for staff. Sharon has provided and included the information about the cost of that 4.5% raise across the board for staff in the budget that was proposed. But what you'll see below is also the cost of a 4% increase, just for the board to look at and determine as you're making your decisions about how you want to move things forward. In addition to those personnel cost changes, we are requesting the add of a HR assistant. That would be a pay scale level 4 that would help with the administration of our human resources program. We've had a lot of things that have been added to the plates of that department, including additional administrative support for our portion of the delivery staff that went through the unionization process, for the additional work that we're doing in behalf of EDI. And there has been a lot added to them. And we think that this position would really be helpful. We are also looking at 250 hours of temporary work that's related to our data team's ongoing projects. That would mean we would bring someone on just to do specific projects within a 250-hour range. This is a new model that we are trying for that group, but they continue to offer some really interesting insights into what is happening in Illinois through the work that we're doing. We think this would allow us to continue to move forward some of those projects of interest in the way that we'd like to see. There is much, much more than what I have just mentioned for you in the detailed narrative financial plan. So it's a great time now, if you have questions about anything that I have mentioned here today, or questions about the additional pieces that you saw mentioned either in the operational plan or the budget narrative, for us to discuss. So I'll open the floor to the board.
I have a question about one of the last things.
Yes.
So you said the 250 hours of temporary work for data projects, which I think is great. Is there a temporary agency, for example, that can identify people and give them to us in that sense? Or are we going to be doing all that outside hiring for a temp person ourselves?
That is something that we're not looking to an agency. We want to be able to develop a posting to be able to hire. We're not exactly sure how that is going to move forward, but we are considering targeting library schools specifically to be able
Okay.
to work with them on a paid temporary assignment related to data work. We still have some investigation to do in terms of our own human resources department to make sure we're in keeping with the kinds of projects that we want to see. But we have seen some of those projects work successfully in other areas of the country. And we think it might be something worth trying here. in
That makes
Vermont.
sense, because I was trying to think of like, do we want to put all this effort into hiring and, a temporary person and having to figure out if they're qualified or not? But that's a great model to look toward library schools
Yep.
for somebody. Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
All right, may I have a motion and a second for approval of the APC grant application and the budget for fiscal year 2024?
So moved.
Julie and Rosie, thank you. Do we need a roll call for this? For the budget?
Probably should because it's
Yeah.
financial.
Emily, roll call, please.
Rosie Camargo,
Yes.
Alice Creason,
Yes.
Robin Hollenbaum,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Julie Millivac,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Oh, she stepped away.
Karen Boydick,
Yes.
Oh,
Monica
there she is.
Caldecott,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
and Alex Van Sunen.
Yes. All right, motion carries. And now back to Monica for the Executive Director Goals presentation.
Thank you, Alex. So last month at our meeting, we talked about draft goals for the executive director for the coming fiscal year. We presented those goals to you. The goals you've seen here have small changes regards to time of year and date that those things will be happening, but the rest of the goals appear as you saw them in the April meeting. So at this point, we open it up for discussion for the board. If there are any additional changes that you would like to see made to the executive director goals for fiscal year 24 before choose to take action.
All right, hearing none, may I have a,
I
sorry,
said we talked about those last month.
we did.
We did.
We did.
Mhm.
May I have a motion and a second to approve the Executive Director's goals for the coming year?
I move that we approve the executive director goals for fiscal year 24.
Second.
Becky and Julie, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. We're going to move on to our board development topic. Ola will be presenting on the Rails digital marketing and communications initiatives.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see that. Great. Okay, once again, my name is Ola Gronsky. I'm the digital marketing and communications specialist here at Rails. I started in November of 2022, and this was a brand new position at Rails. So today's presentation is essentially a 6-month overview of all the projects that I've led during my time here, as well as giving you a sense of where our digital marketing efforts currently stand. So we'll start with social media because that is a huge foundation of digital marketing. And in this day and age, any sort of established organization or business is expected to have some sort of presence online. And we are in a lot of different places. We have the core 4 that we use on a daily basis and disseminate information on, but also talk to our audience and interact with them, which are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then we, of course, also have a YouTube account. This is not where we're interacting with people per se. It's more of a hub that we use to store a majority of our video content. And then I did create a TikTok page for Rails in the beginning of my time here. It's not necessarily where we're putting content out. We've posted a few videos, but we're more trying to meet our audience where they are. So book talk and library talk are big trends right now. And a lot of our member libraries are being super creative and posting videos on there. So we want to make sure that we're aware of those trends and also that we can share them to our larger audience as well in a way of cheering them on. In terms of hard data to show our growth on social media, I'll just be focusing on Facebook and Instagram today. These are the two platforms that our audience uses the most, I would say on a daily basis, whether it be for personal use or they're doing it on behalf of their libraries. So to begin with Facebook, I've taken two key categories for social media analytics. The top bar over here is our reach that measures the amount of individual users or accounts that our content is reaching quite literally on a daily basis. So the yellow part of the bar up there represents the 6-month period before I came to Rails. That's May to October of 2022. And the light blue next to it represents the growth in the last 6 months. So that is a 285% increase in reach on Facebook as of today. Underneath that, we are also measuring engagement, which is people interacting with our posts. This is the measure of how many likes, comments, or shares that we get. And that has grown 176% on Facebook as well. You'll see similar trends on Instagram. Our reach has grown 1,019%. It was certainly an underutilized platform before I came here, but we have really learned how to build a strong foundation on there. And we definitely have like a handful of our member libraries that interact with us regularly on there. That shows through the engagement as well. That is up 653%. For the rest of this presentation, I'll focus more on projects that I've led. So this is going to be it in terms of social media specifically, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The first project we'll talk about is the Rails Minute. These are our short videos intended for our member libraries to watch so they can get an update about what's happening in our library system. These videos typically come out about once a month. We're actually filming one today after this meeting, and they are under 10 minutes long. They feature our member engagement manager, Dan Bostrom. He sits down with Monica Harris to talk about 2 or 3 hot topics that we think our members should be aware of. We've made a lot of improvements to this new version of the Rails Minute. Previously, due to the pandemic, the Rails Minute was just screen recordings on Zoom. And we wanted to take advantage of the fact that more people are in the building these days, and we wanted to make it feel a little bit more authentic and personable. So we now film these in Monica's office, kind of like a talk show style between Dan and Monica. And we've also made a lot of improvements in terms of video and sound quality. I use 2 DSLR cameras, one on each of our speakers, edit them together, post-production in Adobe Audition and Premiere Pro. And then we also got some really great wireless lavalier mics from IT, so that has significantly improved the quality there as well. In terms of analytics, previously the Rails Minute was only posted on Facebook and YouTube. I have since expanded to also posting them directly on Instagram and LinkedIn, which surprisingly are the 2 platforms that receive the most views of the Rails Minute. So not necessarily what you would think. I think you presume it'd be Facebook, but it's actually Instagram and LinkedIn. So you may have noticed some updated headshots of our staff here online. When I came into this position, the new website was being designed, and we wanted to make sure that a core focus of it was that things looked professional and sleek. So the staff directory was also going to fall in line with that. I traveled to every single one of our service centers and took headshots of all of our staff, from the directors to the delivery drivers and sorters and everyone in between, which is also a really great opportunity for everyone to get a headshot. Not everyone has that chance. And I also trained the delivery service managers to take headshots of new staff as part of the onboarding process. They each now have a ring light and some tutorial directions on how to take photos with their company cell phones. And it's resulted in a really great looking staff directory online. And I'm also excited to tell you guys that the board members will also be able to get their headshots taken when they go to that board orientation July board meeting. So you guys are next. Get ready.
In July, you said?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're well, yeah, make sure everyone knows beforehand. We're not trying to catch everyone off guard. Next, we have what is probably the favorite part of my job, which is going out to our member libraries and taking photos of the workers and their spaces. From a marketing standpoint, being able to directly sit down with your audience makes a huge difference. We get to learn about what their values are, what things that they want to amplify in their work. And I get to take that all into consideration when I'm then creating content that I want to resonate with them so that they can spur some sort of action. These are also absolutely the highest performing posts on our social media. People love seeing their peers doing great work, and that's really what Rails exists to do, which is to amplify these things. And we're also building a comprehensive portfolio of photos just for Rails to have to then use on our marketing materials in the future. Like Monica mentioned, the networking event we had here is now the photo that's on our website. We have delivery training videos, which is a series of 5 tutorial style videos for our member libraries to watch when training their staff on how to properly prepare materials for delivery. We sat down with, of course, Mark Hatch and all of the delivery service managers to get great feedback about things that needed to be updated in order to reflect current best practices. I want to give a huge thanks to Stacy Palmisano for being my wonderful hand model. I truly could not have made these videos without her help, so I do want to give her a shout out. And we actually did just have a comment at Reaching Forward a few weeks ago of a librarian who said she loved the videos and was sharing them with all of her staff. So while these definitely aren't like fun videos, they are very essential in making sure that the delivery process is as smooth and efficient as possible, not only for our libraries, but the staff at our service centers as well. Perhaps the most timely project that I worked on was the board election campaign that Monica brought up earlier. So in the past, we had only received about 200 votes on average in our board elections, and that only makes up 16% of our total number of library agencies that are able to vote. So we know we wanted to approach it different this year in order to yield a higher voter turnout. So some of the things that we did was mail individual letters to each of our member libraries. So libraries that received delivery through the blue bins got them in the blue bins. But we also wanted to reach libraries that do not get deliveries. So we did those through USPS. And we included, I brought them here, an 8.5 by 11 flyer advertising the election and why you should vote and how to vote. But we also thought that if a library is receiving these letters in the mail and they don't do delivery, they may not have a good idea of what Rails does at all. So we wanted to supply information for them to get to know Rails a little bit better. I ended up creating these cards here that have QR codes to each of our member center pages on the website. These are type-specific web pages that members can go to see Rails resources and programs specific to their library type. This way, a school librarian doesn't have to sift through information that doesn't necessarily align with what they're able to do in their own libraries. So we included those in there in hopes that not only would people then be aware of our election, but they might feel more compelled to take us up on all of the great things that we offer. We, of course, also ran a social media campaign. We had reasons why you should vote. We previewed some candidate profiles. We did countdowns and progress trackers, and of course, utilized those type-specific email lists because we wanted to make sure that in this campaign, we were reaching more than just our public libraries. We also had some opportunities for outreach. So we had the Reaching Forward conference that I mentioned, and then of course the meet and greets at all of our member libraries. And this word of mouth marketing is really powerful just because you can actually have a conversation with people. And the best feeling was getting to the Algonquin meet and greet when we had just mailed these flyers out and I put one in front of someone. She's like, I already got mine and I already voted. I was like, yes, it worked. So I do think that that made a difference in making a lasting impression on our members. And then for the final push toward the end, I kept a spreadsheet of all of the library agency director emails and was slowly taking them off one by one as someone voted, so that I then had a list of all the directors that had not yet voted in our election. And we made sure to send a direct email to their inbox rather than hoping that they were on a list, an email list on our listserv. So I do think that that did help a lot in that final push. So again, as we said, we had the 16% historical average and we are now up to 26%, which is a new record for Rails. So I think as long as we continue to analyze the things that we did and think strategically, we will see that number grow even more in the future. While we're counting the actual votes for the election and the outcome of that, we can at least look at voter data. So I have a chart up here that illustrates the votes by library type. So obviously you can see that in blue is the public libraries making up a huge chunk, 63%. It's not entirely surprising. While they aren't the type of library that makes up the majority of our members, they do use a majority of our resources and interact with us the most. But school libraries followed behind in second in that yellow chunk up there, that is 14%. And then academic and special were pretty much evenly split at 11% each. I also created a Google map with voter locations so we could take a look and see how the votes were distributed across our service area. Those are also color coded to reflect library type. And that Google map will be in the agenda minutes for this meeting, so you can take a closer look at that. They're always listening. You can choose your privacy.
She took exception to that.
That is. You could take a look at that at your own time, and send me any questions if you have them. We have a lot of future plans for digital marketing. Obviously, this is only 6 months of work and we've accomplished a lot. So some of the projects that I'm going to be working on is the board orientation video. We are in the middle of that project right now. So previously, the new board members or board members who wanted a refresher had to sit through a pretty lengthy PowerPoint presentation. So we are now trying to condense that information into an engaging and more digestible video so people can actually take a lot of information hopefully away from that day instead of being inundated with so much. The second thing, talking about those member center pages again, is we want to create videos that will live on those pages for each library type. And in those videos, we're going to be featuring our member libraries that take advantage of Rails programs and resources like Explore More, Find More, eRead, all of those things, so that people of the same library type can see what tends to work for them and hopefully jump on it as well. And then the last project that I'll mention is in line with our strategic plan and operational plan is we want to create a My Library Is toolkit for our member libraries. And a part of that would be a video that libraries can show to advocate for funding for their library. And in that video, we want to talk to real member library patrons about resources that they use in their library that are important to them, that they want to continue to be funded, because these are vital resources that need to continue to be available to the community. I think that's going to be a really powerful project, and I'm very much looking forward to working on that. Just skim the surface of all the things that I do. I've loved my time here at Rails, and I'm so excited to continue working on future projects. but I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
I just want to make a comment about how I know we knew this was needed, but how much it's been needed. And I got to work with Ola a little bit at Rails too, or at the Reaching Forward, but these are things that other organizations have people doing, and you hear about how much impact it makes for other people. And I'm glad we've prioritized. A lot of companies and groups don't fund it, right? Because they think you don't need it. But we're seeing, like you said, in 6 months, actual engagement that is above and beyond what we could have done without having somebody who does this full time. So thank you very much for doing it.
How could we as board members help push forward this digital message?
Well, you do a great job on Twitter. But yeah, if you are on social media, I mean, just sharing our content and even liking them. The way the internet works, right? It's not necessarily we put the information and it will be there for people. No, you have a pesky thing called an algorithm. And so the more you like, so you don't even have to share it to your personal pages. Give us a like, and the more likes our posts get, the more it gets boosted and in front of other people. So I would just say, if you can just engage in any way on social media, that would be huge.
Ola,
just like
this is
to comment-
Tom.
Yeah, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Yeah, the last couple weeks, all the Instagram has just been so great. I really like what you've been putting out on Instagram.
Thanks, Tom.
I was just going to comment on how much I appreciate you're taking a very strategic, integrated approach to this. It wasn't, I mean, your presentation, but obviously all the work behind it is not just social media. And I think a lot of organizations that struggle with this are not taking that extra step of thinking about when do you need to incorporate your social strategy into your print strategies, and really considering your audience may not necessarily be in the social space that you're hoping to find them in. So I just wanted to congratulate you on a very thoughtful approach.
Appreciate that.
Well said. I know I have my flyer on my bulletin board because it's so pretty. And I did appreciate, I feel like the flyer, I mean, maybe I just read it from my school library lens, but I feel like you had it targeted to school libraries. Like, hello, you're receiving this because you're a school library. And it could be that someone else in your library district has voted, but maybe they haven't.
Yeah,
And
so just like check on that.
Right.
Make sure they
No,
had
it
the
was,
vote,
it was, I think a strategic and targeted, and hopefully.
We are actually, the communications team, we're currently working on a type specific communications plan, and part of that will be social media. So it will focus on ways that we are really trying to reach not just public libraries. We really do want to have everyone involved in the things we do. So I appreciate you taking note of that.
Yes.
I just want to note, it's hard to believe, Ola, that you have only been with us. For
I know. Yeah.
Because of the amount of work that has gone into this. I think in addition to the wonderful comments that have come from the board, it's been this great mix of things that really increase engagement with our audience, but also just really practical things that are needed and really looked forward to in the way that's going to most resonate with the audience who needs them. So things like those delivery videos that can really make a difference, or like the upcoming board orientation video, which will help not just the day of the orientation, but if we have to make any appointments mid-year, they don't have to wait until next July to get all that information, right? They'll have a video available and there's something that they can get and do. So it's making those kinds of considerations that are going to make us a better organization overall. You've done such a fantastic job. Thank you, Ola.
Well, if anyone has any other questions that arise, please just reach out to me. I'm clearly more than happy to talk about all of that. So just reach out and we can chat about it.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Rails board member reports. Does anyone have anything they want to share about their library or other news?
I just want to thank Monica for coming out to meet with Juanita and Jen. Juanita used to be on our board, and Jen, who might be on this board after the elections, we'll see. They're both new directors at LaGrange and LaGrange Park, and it was both, I heard comments from them that it was nice that they got to get together. They're both very doing a great job, but have a lot going on. And so that Monica took the time to meet with them. A lot of their most of what they do overlaps greatly, like very much duplicating of services, but that's another issue. And so they appreciated that you talked to them and spent some time and got them to set up regular communication. So thank you for taking that time.
It's so inspiring to talk to directors who are as engaged and excited and ready to roll and work in Illinois as it was to talk to them. So absolutely.
Very
my
lucky
pleasure.
in our
Yeah.
Downers Grove is wrapping up our strategic planning process. We had over 2,000 residents respond to our community survey. We had over 140 people participate in focus groups, and we had 26 board staff and community members participate in our strategic retreats last week. And so we are really, really excited to see what Rethinking Libraries, how they put that all together in one big plan. I was very surprised at how there were some capital projects that rose to the top in our strategic planning that I was not expecting. And I was definitely not expecting the mayor, village manager, and our normally not quite so our normally fiscally conservative trustee all totally on board with those goals. So we'll see what happens. Could be interesting.
Exciting.
Yeah, but yep, new strategic plan coming.
Okay. So I have a question. So I'm part of the BIPOC Workers Networking Group with Vanessa Barreal. And one of the things that has been going through with fire has been differential pay. That how many of us that are bilingual speakers are being tapped to translate, to interpret, and not being compensated for that as extra. Like we're just, oh yeah, you speak Spanish. Can you translate our summer reading? The whole program, which I have done for many years at different libraries. And so we were all kind of asking like, how could we do this? You know, and then it started like, well, what about libraries that don't have someone to translate their documents or their paperwork, their flyers, their posters? So one of the things we started, I always, whenever there's anything, I'm like, is there any way Rails can support you in something that you need or an idea that you have? So one of the things the conversation then started was, could Rails pick a vendor or vendors that are vetted translators, like companies, and they can offer like a discount to libraries, so we can have things translated in different languages or like top 10 languages or something. So that was something, because then if libraries didn't have someone, or if so that they don't constantly tap the staff, like I translate everything, but that's not my background. Like my Spanish is first, second, like I learned it because I had to speak to my family and then I forgot and then I relearned it. So I'm not fluent in my writing, but I'm fluent in speaking and reading. So kind of things like that. Like if there's libraries that can tap into it, because I know at Evanston they did, but it was very costly per like documents. So that's when they would do like, well, these important things that have legal things we'll pay for, and everything else we'll just ask staff, you know. And so
go above and beyond, yeah.
Right.
to
And
do
so
more.
we had to translate websites, newsletters. We had to do it during our time. We're not going to get paid extra for that. We have to make it so it's, you know, Spanish isn't just one thing. It has to be understood across different dialects in Spanish. So it takes work, and we're not compensated or appreciated for that.
The city of Berwyn had a policy.
Really?
Yeah, you should take a look. It was the whole
Yes.
city. And we had employees at the library and they were paid a certain amount of money extra a month.
Yes.
Because they
Not
might have
enough,
some other duty.
because I applied and then
Right.
they offered me that.
But it is in the policy
But
of
it
the
is
whole
in
city.
policy, yes.
Yeah.
I would have been compensated $10 more a month
Oh, I thought it was
for
more than that.
translating.
Okay, I thought it was more than that.
But I applied a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, into district schools. And they're one of the biggest with district schools. And they're like, yeah, we would need stuff. And I was like, no. I need more than that. So yeah, that was an option that we had during the BIPOC emails back and forth was, could we have a company that's vetted that could give translations, either a discount or something we could use. So that was.
Hospitals have services.
Yeah, relatedly, we, at my library, we've been talking not about translation, but about interpretation services. And we were looking at, like, what did the medical field use? Because, they do the real time, basically you got somebody on the iPad who's in the room and translating for you.
Yeah, they have a service they use, but that's mostly interpretation.
So it related, but
yeah. And Nihilus has like a list. So when you apply, they ask you like, do you know another language and what it is? And do you feel comfortable interpreting for us? So there's a call list. So if there's someone that comes in and they need Korean or Spanish or Polish, we'll see who's on staff and say, is so-and-so there? Once again, you're not getting compensated extra. They just remove you from your desk or your duties and you go and you now interpret. Because I interpret for passports and I'm a notary. So yeah, it's just kind of like either help us get compensated for that extra work or also offer something where libraries have a discount because it's important and it shouldn't be cost consuming to do that. Or pick and choose, right? Like Evan said, picks and choose what gets translated now because it's so costly. And if they have lots of programs or events, now they're pick and choosing, and that's not fair to your community.
But your point that interpretation and translation are different. I'm just thinking about what Ola said, like, I targeted this message to each, like, even if you can speak another language fluently, you're not trained in how to get that message succinctly across. Because it's not just a pure word for word translation. And there needs to be somebody who understands the intent of the message as well. So that's
there's Southern English that doesn't even sound like English.
No, I mean,
listen to it, you can't understand what they're saying. So yeah, there's a lot of that in Mexico, a lot of different pockets, and they all have different.
Yeah, and then when you grow into that, it's like now you have Central and you have South America, and then in some parts of South America, they don't even speak Spanish. So it's like, it's very, and then you have the ones that you have families that just arrived, families that have been here, families that are 2 generations, and then that dialect changes. So it takes a lot of work. And if libraries can appreciate that, hey, we're going to ask this person to translate something that needs to be printed out to the public, at X amount of times, it's like, let's compensate this person or let's give them extra training so they feel more comfortable in doing it. So I feel like if anyone can offer something like that, it would be great.
I think, I think this is a really interesting idea. One thing is that Rails can't officially guarantee quality but very similar to the kind of thing that we talked about with presenters, but we do often explore relationships with vendors for discounts based on recommendations that come from members, or if members have had a good experience with the translation service that they want to share with us about a potential negotiation, or if there is a great deal of support for this kind of service and, contacting us for looking at some of those things, it's things that we could explore. I'm not sure if any of these services are scalable in the way where they might be open to like a discount for a group of Rails size, but I don't know, is there anything else you would add, Leila?
Yeah, I had Elmhurst reached out about a service, but I'm trying to remember if it was print translations, spoken translation, and possibly pulling together something, although that was more of a group purchase kind of thing. And that's something that's a little harder to manage, committing to a number before we get the discount. It's just, that's really difficult to do. But
if you had to pick, what would we have to focus on? I would say print translation.
Okay.
Because you can hand that to anyone, anywhere, right? If someone's talking to you in a language, you're like, I don't understand. Oh, wait. I have a pamphlet, a flyer, something to explain things. You can hand that out. You don't need to know the language. It's just explaining it to them rather than someone to interpret. But print is always good. And print is really what we're being asked to do as the staff, because I'm not even a librarian, I'm a support staff. So like not only are you asking more of me, but then there's like more of me. So for us as the BIPOC workers, we were asking for like something that can be in print, like print translation.
And your point about it being difficult, we had, in my library, we had 3 fluent Spanish speakers, different dialects. And that print piece, mainly one person was comfortable doing it. It really was a much different talent or skill. And yeah,
I think this is worth us looking into and exploring and seeing if there's anything, that we can think of to do it. But thank you for bringing this to us too, and for thinking of us, as you're looking for solutions. Yeah.
I'll just add one thing. Whoever sits in the school seat, I'm so thrilled that we had three candidates up for the election. That just, to me, that speaks to how Rails is already starting to fulfill the strategic plan to include everybody. So that just made me over the moon happy. So.
and if somebody is using a service that they're really delighted with, we'd love to know who that service is.
Yeah,
for those print translations. Yeah.
Thank you for those comments too, Monica. I appreciate that.
I was just going to put in a little plug for coming to College of DuPage this summer for the Andy Warhol exhibit. Andy Warhol portfolios. It's 96 pieces, including photography from the college's permanent collection, as well as a lot of pieces that are part of the Bank of America collection. People sometimes ask, like, where does this exhibit go next? It doesn't go anywhere next. It's a one-time, it's an event constructed for exhibition at COD this summer. And similar to how we handled Frida Kahlo 2 summers ago, it's really an emphasis on education, not just, a gallery experience. So there'll be a lot of interpretation, lots of really fun activities that are family focused, kind of like a recreation of Central Park out in the Lakeside Pavilion space, a Studio 54 recreation experience in the Playhouse Theater. There's a lot of speakers and a lot of really neat events. And I just like to just the dates, June 3rd is when it opens, runs through September 10th. But I think a really interesting piece for us as a group to be aware of is that similar to last time, there was a real emphasis on community engagement throughout the whole district. And so they did a pop art challenge for the communities. Lombard is one of them. There's about 20 different communities that have signed on to this pop art challenge that involves identifying the 4 most famous people from your town. And then an artist was commissioned to create a Warhol style mural of those 4 people, and then they're being unveiled and displayed in the different communities. And in many cases, it's at the public library in that town. So Roselle, I think it's Roselle. Oh gosh, I'm going to get the list of which libraries, but I'm pretty sure Bloomingdale, Addison. There's a lot of libraries in district that are going to be hosting these, and just a lot of energy like last time around programming and speakers being hosted at libraries to complement what's happening on campus. So it'll be fun for you, fun for your friends. Who doesn't like pop art in the summer, right? Just totally on mark. And a neat opportunity to celebrate what's interesting and unique about all the different communities in our area.
And I have to say, you're doing a great job getting the word out, because my husband forwarded me information to me and my daughter. She'll be home for during that time period.
Right.
Like starting on she'll be going back in June, and he's like, I think we should go to this.
Oh,
I was like, I'm glad you saw that.
So, I can give you specific links, but I think if you just, Google COD Warhol, it's going to pop right up, Pop Art Challenge. You're going to start seeing all these different libraries that are engaging with it. So, check it out.
All right. Any other library reports? All right. If not, let's see. Our next Rails board meeting will be June 16th, 2023 at 1 p.m. We do have need of a closed session today. So the board will move into closed session to discuss matters pertaining to closed session minutes as per 5 Illinois compiled statutes, chapter 120, paragraph 2, section 2C21, which states, exceptions, a public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following subjects. 21, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval of the body, approval by the body of the minutes, or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06. May I have a motion and a second to move into closed session?
So moved, Alice.
Alice, thank you.
Second.
Hi, Karen.
I'm just saying goodbye.
Bye, Karen.
Second, Julie?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
We have to call them.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, roll call.
Sorry.
Yep.
Alice Creason,
Yes.
Robin Hellenthal. Yes. Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Yes.
Julie Millibeck,
Yes.
Becky Spratford.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Karen Voidick,
Yes.
Monica Caldecott.
Yes.
Rosie Camargo,
Yes.
and Alex Vincina.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we are back from closed session. May I have a motion and a second to release the following closed session minutes? Closed sessions from August 28th, 2020, January 15th, 2021, October 22nd, 2021, November 19th, 2021, January 28th, 2022, March 18th, 2022, May 27th, 2022, June 17th, 2022, July 22nd, 2022, August 26th, 2022, October 28th, 2022, November 18th, 2022, January 20th, 2023, January 24th, 2023, and February 7th, 2023.
So moved.
Julie and Rosie, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. All right. Emily, I did have a note about a roll call on there. Do we actually?
I don't know.
Let's do one just to
Yeah.
be sure.
Sorry about that.
It's better. Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Julie Millibeck,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Karen Voidick,
Yes.
Monica Caldecott,
Yes.
Rosie Camargo,
Yes.
Alice Creason,
Yes.
Robin Hollenthal. Yes. And Alex Vincina.
Yes. All right, that concludes our business. So thank you all for your attendance, and I adjourn this meeting at 12:21 p.m. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.